Mon, good morning. Mon, hi Mon, good morning. Mon, Sir Mike, good morning.
Like fever or chills are the result of our immune system attacking the body by increasing blood flow and raising our temperature. These are designed to activate the immune system in the same way.
Mon, morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. We're just fixing some technical glitches, so we'll start the webinar in few minutes po. Thank you so much po.
Hindi ka na. Anong dibubuhan mo? Pang ibang mga, yan. Kababayan. Ay, ano ang mga payahan, ang mga meeting mo? Dito, no? Test ka nga rin ikaw dyan. O, tumasas.
Ganong project siya kung galing. Tapos may DJ siyang dubang professional.
Kasi nga rin ang naging. Chief of Administrative Post. Keeping host. Ako itong Francis, baka ito si Kuya, ako itong Mali, Peke. PSO.
Hi everyone, good morning po again. Sorry po for the technical glitches. We're now live on Facebook and we're ready to start. Sir Mike, okay ka na po? Naka-host ka na?
Okay lang, Sir Earl. Yeah, meron na.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, Dr. Alanis. Hi, Doc. Good morning po.
Maging sa poverty level po, ang taas na kahirapan sa probinsya.
Sige po. Si VP muna. Good morning po, VP. Pwede po natin i-try lang po yung try lang po ng sound. So, okay naman po.
Okay
sige po.
naman. Narinig ako.
Okay po.
Okay.
Iyo po, Tabi. Okay. Thank you po. Sige po. Thank you po, VP. Hi, Dr. Elanis. Pwede pong quick check lang po ng sound kung okay na po.
Yes, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Great. Thank you so much po, Dr. Elanis. Salamat po. Doc Danny?
Earl. Okay na, Earl?
Iyo po, Doc. Okay. Yes, Doc. Clear na po. Tapos, magayon po ang the famous background.
Earl, si Congressman. That's fine.
Sige po. I-check ko po. Congressman Gabi? Congressman? Gabi? Sige po. Si Mayor po muna, Garo. Mayor, yan na po ka mo, Mayor? Mayor Nelson? Okay. Anyway, may tinauman pong message si Mayor Nelson na recorded. If di po siya pong live. So si Congressman na lang po, Garo? Congressman Gabi? Or staff po ni Congressman? Sige po. Bakit po palagi na po si Congressman? Halatang lang po madali.
Good morning, Earl.
Hi Dean. Good morning po. Mag-open po ba kayo ng camera?
Opo, oo.
Sige po. Pwede po natin i-try yung camera niyo po. Great. Okay po. Okay na po. Okay. Siguro po good morning again to our participants. Halatang lang po Garo in few minutes po si Congressman Gabi. Palagi naman daw po si Congressman. Nagkaroon lang po kaya kita ng technical glitches sa registration. So apologies po on behalf of the organizing committee. But we're about to start po in few minutes po. Mabalas po maray.
Sige po.
Good.
Earl, check girali kung nakakayanis pa si Congressman.
Okay, good morning, Congressman. Congressman Gabi. Kong Gabi. Magandang aga po.
Magandang aga.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning po, Congressman.
Hello.
Okay. Pasensya na po, Congressman, sa
Complicated.
Opo, pasensya na po. Apologies po. My fault po. I take responsibility po. Pasensya na po nagkaroon po kasi tayo ng problema sa registration po. Pero we're happy po na yaon na po kamo. And I guess we're ready po to start na. We're just waiting for Sir Michael to start po the webinar. So, maraming salamat po ulit. Sir Mike? Mon? Yaon ka na, Mon? Mon? Sige pa. Hi, Sir Mike. Sir Mike Vale. Can you take over, please? Thank you. Wala po si Mon. Good morning, Sir Mike.
Sir Earl, wait lang po. Madali lang.
Sige. Thank you. Ikaw na po in charge. Thank you. Hi everyone. We'll be starting po in a minute po. Mabalas po. Thank you.
Sakong mga tugang kay Kristo. Kamusta po kamo? Ini po si Bishop Rolly, kay iba si Mayor Son Legacion. Tagalog po sa Indo, kamusta ang duyugan ang programa kan gobyerno na magpabakuna kontra COVID-19. Ini sa itong obligasyon sa satuyang kapwa, asin pagpapahalaga sa buhay na itinaokan sa itong kagurangnan.
Para sa mas marikas, konbenyente, asin ligtas na pagpalista para sa pagpabakuna. Piglansar na niya to ang Naga City Online Vaccine Registration para makarehistro ang sarong Nagenyo, mag-login na sa covidvax.naga.gov.ph.
Ano pang hinahanap nindo? Madyana, magparehistro, asin magpabakuna.
Ang bakuna, ligtas, epektibo, asin libre.
Pagtarabangan ta,
Suportahan ta, magpabakuna kontra COVID-19.
Awareness, hosted by Partido State University and its partners. To begin with our program, may we call in our Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Erlinda M. Basilia, for her opening message.
To our dynamic University President, Dr. Raul G. Badisina, to our highly esteemed 3rd Legislative District Representative of Camarines Sur, Honorable Congressman Gabriel Bordado Jr., also to our enthusiastic Mayor of Naga City, Honorable Nelson Ligacion, to the resident volcanologist of Mayon Observatory, Dr. Paul Carson Alanis, other university officials of Partido State University, faculty, guests, stakeholders, our students. Ladies and gentlemen, Diyos marhay na aga po sa Satuya Agabos. As we are all aware, Bicol region is highly prone to various natural calamities such as earthquakes, typhoons, landslides, flash floods, and the like. Because of its geographical location, since the region lies along the typhoon and earthquake belts. Recently, Camarines Sur experienced series of earthquakes that according to the OSTP box, a total of 27 earthquakes, which contributed stress and even fear to the people of the community. This is due definitely to lack of understanding and awareness to this phenomenon. Some says that the end is near. The coming of Jesus Christ is fast approaching. Others says that it is because of the impending eruption of Mount Isarog. So all of this are a result of confusion, and some are superstition. That is why we are very much grateful to the organizers of this noble and very timely forum for us to be enlightened of these seismic activities in our region. Nevertheless, with or without this natural phenomenon that we experienced, we should be aware and prepared. Actually, our university, Partido State University, is conducting a fire and earthquake drill every quarter. This is in partnership with LGU Goa and the Bureau of Fire as part of our disaster reduction management. Before the pandemic, students, the teaching and the non-teaching personnel of the university participate actively in this undertaking in order to increase the awareness and preparedness and understanding of the DRRM. Of course, with the purpose of increasing resiliency and decreasing vulnerability. So to this point, I would like to extend my warmest thanks to Dr. Danny Herona, Sir, the Director of Partido State University Center of Partido Studies, also to Dr. Bernadette Gumba, the Dean of the Graduate School, as well as to Erjan Hernandez, the Curator of Museo de Isarog, as well as the Office of the University President, Office, of course, of the Honorable Congressman Gabriel Bordado, and also the government, the local government unit of Naga, for sponsoring this timely and very relevant activity. Also, I would like to thank also the participants in this forum. So again, marhay na aga po sa Satuya Agabos. Welcome po to this forum on Bicol earthquake and geologic disaster awareness. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Eden. That was our Vice President for Academic Affairs. We are also honored to be joined by authorities as well as leaders who are with us in all our ups and downs. This morning, we are also joined by Congressman Bordado. So for a message, may we call in Honorable Gabriel Bordado Jr., District Representative, 3rd Legislative District of Camarines Sur, House of Representatives. Kong?
Salamat, Abi. Thank you very much. For the past few days, we have been experiencing terrible, nay, terrifying earthquakes. So we need to know more about earthquakes, not just from our friends or acquaintances or from the fake news-laden social media platforms. I am a victim now of this fake news platforms, but from the experts themselves. So I am thanking the Partido State University, led by my hermano, Dr. Raul Bradicina, and my compadre, Dr. Danilo Herona, for coming up with this forum. And of course, I also wish to express my thanks to the experts who are more than willing to share their knowledge and expertise on this very, very critical aspect. So, my dear friends, I do hope that we can share this forum with a lot of people. I had a rather difficult time accessing the forum, and I do hope that the recorded version of this forum will be shared with our people. I also wish to thank my friend and party mate, the Mayor of Naga City, Attorney Nelson Ligacion, for co-sponsoring this event. Thank you very much to the Partido State University. Mabuhay po kamo kabos. And mabuhay po kita sa dalaga na iniyo kag mga linog sa satuyang lugar. Diyos mabalos po.
Thank you very much, Congressman Bordado. Same with what I was saying a while ago, we are honored to be joined by our leaders today. So this morning, we will also be hearing a message from Honorable Nelson S. Legacion, City Mayor, the local government unit of Naga City. Mayor? Okay, so in his absence, Mayor Legacion has prepared a video for all of us, video message for all of us.
Good morning, Sir Mike. Sir Mike, pwede pong pa-off muna tapos pa-share sound po, pag-share screen. Thank you. Sa bottom po sa left side, may share sound po. Thank you.
Wait lang, sir. Wait lang po.
Diyos marhay na aga sa gabos. We thank the office of Congressman Gabriel Bordado Jr. and the Partido State University, especially its president, Dr. Raul Bradicina, its Dean of School of Graduate Studies and Research, and wife of my good friend and our department head of the Naga City Public Safety Office, Dr. Bernadette Gumba. Also the director of Center for Partido Studies and a renowned historian, Dr. Danilo Hirona, and to all its teaching and non-teaching staff for your help and cooperation with the City Government of Naga in our joint endeavor to successfully hold this forum on Bicol earthquakes and geologic disaster awareness. Our appreciation also goes to our benevolent speakers for agreeing to make time for this very important forum. This forum is very timely today, as Naga City and the rest of the Bicol region has been experiencing series of earthquake activities since October 14, 2021. This phenomenon, identified by the Department of Science and Technology as earthquake swarm, has worried us all and has posed danger to our lives and properties. And the anxiety and fear in the hearts and minds of our constituents are escalated further by the lack of understanding of these occurrences. Indeed, just like the present pandemic, this earthquake swarm is unprecedented in contemporary history. Thus, words are not enough to highlight the utmost vitality of this forum on Bicol earthquakes and geologic disaster awareness. With this activity, we seek to assist our people in comprehending the reasons behind and the possible risk of the current earthquake activities, and most especially in providing safety protocols to avoid as much as possible damage to properties and foremost lives of our people. I therefore implore all the attendees to become very attentive in today's forum, and if I may advise, jot down notes for future references and perusal. With all of us equipped with the needed knowledge, we can join hands and forge strategic partnerships in building a self-reliant and caring city, a truly maugmang lugar. Godspeed to all of us. Diyos mabalos.
Thank you very much, Mayor. At this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, we will now be proceeding to the rationale of the event. To do the honors, may we call in Dr. Bernadette G. Gumba, the Dean, School of Graduate Studies and Research, Partido State University.
Thank you, Mon. Good morning to Congressman Gabi Bordado. Good morning to Mayor Nelson Legacion and to our esteemed speaker, Dr. Paul Alanis. Good morning. To our President, Dr. Raul Bradicina, Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Eden Basilia, and of course, to my esteemed colleague in the graduate school, Dr. Danny Hirona, who is also the Director of Center for Partido Studies, my co-members in the organizing team, Earl Jan Hernandez, Mon Estrada, and Mike Valle. And of course, good morning to all the attendees. There were more than 500 registrants. I hope they'll be able to join us today. Thank you for joining us. For this particular webinar, I'm sure, especially those who were in Naga City, Canacman, and some areas of Camarines Norte, Camarines Sur, and Albay last October 14 to about October 18, many of us were really nervous, afraid, and apprehensive. So many of us, I'm sure, were asking, what is this? What is happening? Why is this happening? What is the cause? what might be happening in the next few days or weeks. So we have many questions, and as mentioned by Kong Gabi, the apprehensions and the fears are actually worsened because of fake news that are not that cannot be explained by data, cannot be explained by evidence. So this webinar lecture is a concrete response of Partido State University. Again, thank you for the initiative of Dr. Danny Herona. He was actually the one who organized the different units and fellow faculty members who are now helping in this lecture. As a university, as an institution of higher education and advanced education, Partido State University believes that we have the major responsibility of producing and disseminating information that is science-based, that is research-based, evidence-based, not just apocalyptic declarations which cause fear and without basis. So it's very important that when we make decisions, my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, that these decisions and actions are based on science. That's why we're very fortunate that we have Dr. Paul Alanis today, and of course my colleague Dr. Danny Herona to give us more information. I'm sure many of us have questions. I hope we can participate later. PSU takes that responsibility to lead, especially that we are the only institution in this part of the country that offers geology as a course. And it's one of our vision to be the premier university on bioresource science, geology, and environment. So we took this initiative, and we hope our actions and decisions in the future will be based on reliable information, research-based data and information. So we have for today two speakers. One they will be introduced later. One will talk about the brief history of earthquakes, and the other one will give us an update on the October 2021 seismic activities. And we also invited reactors from the Geology Department of the university, a faculty member, and a student. This lecture is sponsored by the Center for Partido Studies, the School of Graduate Studies, the Museo de Isarog, Office of the President, and of course, thank you to the Office of Congressman Gabi Bordado and the Naga Local Government Unit through Mayor Nelson Legacion. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you very much, Duke Burns. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, we will now be proceeding with our first talk. May we now call in Dr. Danilo M. Herona, the Director, Center for Partido Studies, Partido State University, for his talk on the brief history of earthquakes in the Philippines and the Bicol region. Doc?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to my dear friend, long-time friend and compadre, Congressman Gabi Bordado, our very, very dependable public servant. Especially, he has been very, very supportive of much of the that we are undertaking for the benefit of our community. To Mayor Nelson Legacion of the City Government of Naga, who has also been supportive in many of our activities, especially on conferences in history. To the President, the ever-dynamic and forward-looking University President, Raul Bardicina, one of the best presidents I have worked under with, and I'm truly impressed of the way he steered the university to the 21st century. And as I said, he's a very, very dynamic. He has organized a lot of programs and chart a course to better improvement of the university, and which would, in a way, improving of the global developments, and especially especially in the area of the sciences, in particular in my field, social sciences. To the ever effective and efficient and brilliant Dean of the Graduate School, Dean Bernadette Gumba, and in a way, I am very, very fortunate to have her Dean in the Graduate School. To the Vice President for Administration, for Academic Affairs, for academics, sorry, Dr. Basilia, Eden Basilia. She has undertaken a lot of activities which would, in a way, we have been engaged in part in projects and projects that the university undertakes under her management. To the other partners we have, to the director of the Museo Isarog, Jan Hernandez. I'm very, very grateful to him, for he has always been very, very much available in all of the projects that we have undertaken. To Mon Estrada, my second in command in some way, in the Partido Study Center, Dylan Elcano Studies, and he has I don't think I would be able to carry out much of the initiatives that we have undertaken without his presence. I'm very, very grateful to this group who have been very supportive of this undertaking. Now, let me now proceed to the my brief discussion on the history of earthquakes. I would like to focus it more on Bicol, because we have not done much research on this. I think it's because of the timely event. I would like to share whatever materials I have. I have written, I was actually almost finishing a book, the 1814 eruption. By the way, Dr. Chris Newhall, I think, is joining us also in this forum, but he's not going to participate as discussants, but he would be, if he had the time, he would be listening or joining us in this webinar. But as we said, I have worked on a book on the 1814 eruption, and therefore I have done much work on in activities based on archival documents. I am not a scientist, of course, but as a historian, I have done substantial works in the archives in Spain, particularly in the Archivo General de Indias in Seville, and in the Franciscano Ibero-Oriental, because this is the largest archive of Franciscans in the entire world, where much of the documents on Bicol and in the Philippines are located. The reason is because Bicol region has always been a Franciscan mission from 1578 until 1898, and therefore anybody who would like to do research on any aspects of the life of the Bicolanos during the Spanish era, I think the best archive to consult would be the CEPPIO, the Archivo Franciscano. I've been there for about 12 times, but I've only, I would say, scratched the surface of documents. And there are very, very interesting documents on calamities in the Franciscan, including the Mayon volcano eruptions and some data on Mount Isaro earthquakes, because they are generally connected by the missionaries at the time. When there are earthquakes, the general impression is they are connected with volcanic eruptions. So basically, that's I would be talking, as I said, a historian. So I'm not going to interpret these phenomena in scientific terms, but I would connect them in terms of the cultural responses of the Bicolanos to this particular. First and foremost, the Bicolanos were familiar with earthquakes ever since. I would say we have in fact a term for that in Bicol, linog. The 16th century or the 17th century Spanish dictionary written by or composed by Fray Marcos de Lisboa already mentioned the term linog. And of course, it has as equivalent. The Spaniards would refer to this in various archival documents as terremotos, when you say movement of the land, and of course, temblores, or that's another word for earthquake. Temblores or terremotos or linog in Bicol. The ancient Bicolanos had an explanation why earthquakes or linogs occurred. They would say that, and just I think the belief is shared by other Filipinos in other parts of the islands and even in Southeast Asia. They believe that the earthquake is caused when the very, very large giant snake move, because they believe they imagine that the world is actually resting on the back of this large snake. In the Sanskrit language, they generally refer to the snake as Naga, and that's the reason why there were some theories that the word Naga could have been derived from this particular monstrous snake, apparently because it was given such name because of the meandering shape of the Naga River. So that's how the ancient Bicolanos interpreted earthquakes. But then we have a list of gathered from the various archival sources. Aside from the works of Father William Repiti and Father Sadera Maso, these are Jesuit seismologists in the late 19th century. We have, and aside from my documents I have added, of course, the earliest compilation of these reports of earthquakes in the Philippines, which include a number of them in those coming from the Bicol region, were actually compiled, as I said, by these Jesuits based at that time at the Manila Observatory in the Ateneo de Manila in the late 19th century. And they published them, particularly the work of Father William Repiti in the early 20th century, and of the Spanish Jesuit Father Sadera Maso. Then there are other, most of these materials that they got, when I was reading them, are actually taken also from the earlier missionaries in the Philippines. In the Bicol region, particularly the informations on the 19th century earthquakes were actually taken from Father Felix Duerta's Estado Geográfico, which of course we are very, very familiar with. But then, as I said, there are other materials, those that have not been mentioned by Father Repiti and Sadera Maso, were actually found in manuscript forms in the archives of Brazil, as I said, in the Archivo Franciscano and the Archivo General de Indias, the largest archives on the Spanish Empire, and in the CEPPIO, in the Archivo Franciscano Ibero-Oriental in Madrid, the Franciscan archives, and also at the Biblioteca Nacional de España. These are some of the places where substantial documentations on those pertaining to the Bicol region and also on calamities and earthquakes. I have shown here in this map, this is an 1830 map of the Bicol region, particularly of Camarines Sur, which shows to us the epicenter of the earthquake that we have experienced a few days ago. So it says here San Nicolas. As you will notice, there is San Nicolas in Canacman, Cagmuna, that is actually Cagbunga, and Limanan, Punong, and of course the shape of the river today is already different from the shape of the river before, because there is a certain the stretch of the river passing through Punong and San Nicolas. Was actually today. Earlier on, it was actually there was a land between that area, but today it was cut off. There was a channel that had been made at that in around 1957, which created another body of water, which now today a large body of water is a river. And so, if you look at the higher part there, it says there, Cámara de las Renos. That upper portion of San Nicolas, historically, that is where the first leper colony in the Bicol region was established. So very, very close to San Nicolas, to Magarao, to Punong. That was the first leper colony ever established in the Bicol region. After before even the leper colony in somewhere in Libmanan. But this is the epicenter, as to give you an idea of the earthquake that we have experienced today. And this is a map around composed around 1829, 1830. The earliest recorded earthquake was in 1628, and generally it was connected to Mayon volcanoes activities. Although historically, our tradition reckons the earliest eruption of Mayon sometime in 1611, but then there was actually a document in the Archivo General de Indias which even moved it back to 1604, and in that document it was actually a letter of a certain Spaniard based in the Philippines who reported of the volcanic activity of Mayon, but also mentioned of a series of earthquakes that took place around that particular year, 1604. And so it means to say that volcanic and even seismic activities have been recorded historically as early as 1604. Then in 1690, there is another document that says a portion of a report dated April 1700s, but actually it was referring to an earth activities. And it says here, the Bishop Andres Gonzalez, the one who introduced the Peña Francia devotion, says here, based on the letter of his secretary, Juan de Somonte, and they blamed the cracks in the cathedral due to many powerful earthquakes which hit Nueva Cáceres. So, as early as the 90s, the residents of Nueva Cáceres or of Naga had already had already witnessed, experienced powerful earthquakes in some way. This is probably the 1690s, and the evidence of that would be in the cracks in the cathedral. By the way, the cathedral at the time in 1690 was not yet located in the present site of the cathedral. It's located near the bank of the Bicol River, where the Naga supermarket now stands. So that was the original location of the cathedral, and it took an earthquake for it to be transferred to the present site. So as you will see later on. Can I proceed? Okay, here is the list of what we have initially. I have gathered from available documents from Maso, Felix Huerta, and even primary documents kept in the Archivo General. So one of the earliest, aside from the 1628 earthquakes, we have 1711, we have 1748, February, 1750, 1811, I'll talk about this a little bit later. The 1814 eruption, 1814 February 1 earthquakes. Of course, 1814 eruption was the one responsible for the destruction of Cagsawa that we know today, which people thought earlier had been buried by volcanic debris during the 1814 eruption. But it's actually not true. The documents in the Franciscan archives, and I have revealed that in series of my articles, show that it was not actually covered by lava. It was not destroyed completely. It was still intact in 1814, 2 days after the Mayon volcano eruption. So there's another 1840 earthquakes, 1852 earthquake, 1853, 1855, and of course down the line. We have until the data would be going to 1907, 1909. So now, one of the most powerful recorded eruptions that we had, the earliest one was in 1711. Well, I think this report of the 1711 earthquake was contained in a certain notebook known as the Cuaderno, written by a certain resident of Nabua. And I think when I examined the Cuaderno, it must have been written in the early 1900s. And it was taken from the memories of the people of the town. In fact, the accounts of this sort of a history of Nabua goes back to as early as 1560s, and it must have been an accumulated historical narratives going back to that particular period in 1760s until preserved in the memory of the residents and passed on from one generation to the next until 1900s. And as I said, one of the entries in this Cuaderno, in this local history account, was in 1711's earthquake. And I think those who have read it probably simply shrugged off their shoulder, did not take it seriously, because it was apparently a local folklore. But what does it say? It says there that there was a certain powerful earthquake. According to the story, the earthquake's magnitude was never experienced in their entire life, as evident in the enormous destruction inflicted both on the constructed buildings and on the ground itself. This caused huge running to the foot of Mount Sumagang, right under the church, the door of the church. It reached almost 40 arms length, causing the people to believe it was the end of the world. So it created a chasm, a depth chasm, very deep chasm, 40 arms length, was probably about 100 feet. So it sounds quite, let's say, incredible, because aside from this, there is no any other source which seems to buttress the story of the 1711. In fact, by the way, for the people of Rinconada, it was because of the supposed 1711 earthquake that they developed, that they had this, you might say, devotion to the what they call the Virgen de Katipanan, because they made a tipan to the Virgin Mary of Nabua, that if they would be spared from this earthquake, then they would perform an annual homage. They would pay an annual homage to the Virgin of Katipanan. So as I said, for a long time, nobody seemed to have taken this account seriously of this earthquake. And even myself, when I read that, I simply drop it off as probably a product of a certain folk story. But when I was working on the Franciscan Archive in Madrid, a document came out which shows that indeed an earthquake occurred in 1711. So there was a certain direct primary document that confirms that this earthquake actually occurred. And it inflicted serious damages on churches. I think at least 5 churches were mentioned here. And you have to understand that in the Spanish era, the indicator of the magnitude of the earthquake is not actually measured by any scientific instruments. It was measured by their observation on its impact on the natural environment and on the man-made environment, on the buildings. And in this particular case, it apparently suggests to us that such an earthquake occurred in 1711. Surprisingly, 100 years later, there was another earthquake in 1811. Another powerful earthquake in October 5, 1811. And this earthquake, this is not based on secondary sources. This is based on a primary document written by the Bishop de la Concepcion. And Bishop de la Concepcion was a bishop in the early 19th century, mentioned, just to read, I arrived in the city of Nueva Cáceres where I found the cathedral damaged and the episcopal palace in ruins, results of the strong quakes of the year 11. With a permit from your viceroyal patron, I have undertaken the construction of the cathedral building and another building in more solid and convenient place, since the original site was muddy and could be contributory to the ruin of this edifice. By the way, I translated this from Spanish. Then there is another document written by him sometime later, I think 10 or 15 years after this report. When I arrived in this diocese, the cathedral of the church was in a state of ruin, like most of the churches of the province of Camarines and those of Albay, due to the fury of the earthquake suffered in the year 11, whose destruction was beyond repair. Meaning to say, therefore, the eruption of 1811 had a wide-ranging impact geographically in the region, including those of Albay. In fact, in one of the documents which connects with this document about the eruption, about the earthquake in 1811, there were churches as far as Partido districts that were destroyed because of this 1811 earthquake. As a consequence of this, as written by Bishop Bernardo de la Concepcion, the cathedral was eventually abandoned. The cathedral, where was the cathedral? As I said earlier, the cathedral which suffered the 1690 earthquake was also the same cathedral that had been affected by the 1811 earthquake, located in the present supermarket. So for this reason, they decided to transfer that in the present site in 1815. One of the reasons, because it was located on a higher ground. Second, because it was a more solid ground, far from the Bicol River, and therefore, as De La Concepcion had earlier said, is probably the kind of soft soil where it was located earlier that could have been contributory to its ruins in the 1811 October 5 earthquake. Now, there were other reports of these other earthquakes that have been very, very violent, at least based on the descriptions given by Repiti, Sadera Maso, Felix Huerta, and some, and even the different bishops assigned here in the Bicol region. In fact, of course, much of the information we got came from the Franciscan missionaries and from the bishops who were actually reporting the damage inflicted on their structures. Most of these signs of the destructiveness were reflected on the buildings. And that's the reason why much of the information we got about how powerful an earthquake were actually contained in the reports made by these bishops and missionaries to the King of Spain or to the Governor General in Manila. Regarding also the tremors that we have experienced recently, series of tremors. And earlier, yesterday, we had an interview already with a certain local radio station with Dr. And there were questions how was it new to us today, or was there any precedence historically? And I said, actually, it happened already in various episodes, various parts of our history, going back to as early as 1750, as I said here. And there were reports of such. One, for example, was in 1750. It says here, on the 10th, I noticed movement at dawn, but that night at 7 o'clock the earthquake had repeated itself strongly twice, and it continued until the next morning and to the evening of the following day. That is the day before this letter. So there's already another an indication that series of what seismologists would refer to as a swarm earthquakes had already been experienced by our ancestors or our grandparents. There was another earthquake in the night. So there was in 1861. Another earthquake in the night of the following day. Another registered one at 2, and later about 2, and so on and so forth. There was a weak earthquake in the evening at the 5th of the present. And countless repetitions followed, over 100, and the more severe ones having been counted during the first. So even 100 aftershocks were actually recorded in some of these earthquakes that we have experienced. So, sorry. (1869), over 100 of the more severe ones having been counted during the earthquake. Repetition for 2 days. The same night, 4 repetitions of the moderate intensity. 5 repetitions, 5 strong earthquakes. Duration, so series of the 1877 to us by very many aftershocks of variable intensity, 20 having been recorded during the first 24 hours following the earthquake. So in 1877, there was actually 20 having been recorded, at least during the first 24 hours. And last few. Okay, various earthquakes, several repetitions. 1884, many repetitions occurred on October 29 until the end of November. So October 29 until the end of November, almost a month of a series of earthquakes. 1887, March 25th witnessed a very intense repetition, while lighter aftershocks were frequent until the month of May. A strong repetition, 1897, May 13, occurred at 14 hours, 9 minutes, and 15. Weak aftershocks were frequent until the 27th. So these are some of the evidences historically that we have been witnessing these earthquakes in previous history. These are some of the documents where these reports of earthquakes are actually mentioned. These 2 documents are actually the reports of Bishop Bernardo de la Concepcion, which I think is a very, very important report because it mentions there extensively of the damage of the 1811 earthquake and how the people of Nueva Cáceres responded to this earthquake and reconstructed the present site where it is now found. This is the report of the 1711 earthquake, which I got from the CEPPIO, Archivo Franciscano Ibero-Oriental, where the Alcalde Mayor de la Provincia de Camarines reported to the national government of the preparar las 5 iglesias administradas por los franciscanos que quedaron dañadas de los temblores de 1711. So it's a report of the damage inflicted on the churches in the 1711 earthquake. Thank you very much for this short additional information on the history of earthquakes. I think we should pay more attention to Dr. Paul Alanis because of these updates and the scientific interpretations of what we have been witnessing for the past few days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Danny Herona, for that very informative and precise discussion of our experiences of earthquakes in the colonial period. At this point, we now proceed to our second speaker. Allow me to introduce our speaker. He is a native of Irigas City and finished his Bachelor of Science in Social Work, then Bachelor of Science in Geology, both from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, then went on to take his Master of Science in Earth and Environmental Sciences in Kagoshima University, Japan. He likewise finished his Doctor of Science in Earth and Environmental Sciences in Tokai University, Japan. His current work includes being the project leader, Geophysical, Gravity, and Electromagnetic Monitoring and Studies of Active Volcanoes, Volcano Monitoring and Eruption Prediction Division, PHIVOLCS. Senior Science Research Specialist, Volcano Monitoring and Eruption Prediction Division, PHIVOLCS, and Resident Volcanologist, Mayon Volcano Observatory, PHIVOLCS, Legazpi City, Albay. As a published scholar, our speaker has produced 39 and counting scientific papers and published abstracts, and the most recent of which include the following, co-authored with fellow scholars on the field. Microgravity observations in Mayon Volcano, Philippines during and after the 2018 eruptions, which was published in 2019. Results of recent electromagnetic observations at Taal Volcano, Philippines, published in 2019. And microgravity monitoring, preliminary observations in Taal and Mayon Volcano, Philippines, published in 2018. He is a member of various academic societies like the Geological Society of the Philippines, the Juvenis Orbis Geologic Fraternity, the University of the Philippines Geology Alumni Association, and the Asia-Oceania Geoscience Society. Friends, ladies, and gentlemen, to give us a more nuanced understanding of the seismic activities in our region this month, and to give us updates on the same, let us all welcome the resident volcanologist of the Mayon Volcano Observatory, Dr. Paul Carson Alanis.
Thank you very much for that introduction. May I share my screen? Okay, good morning. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So again, I'm Paul Alanis from PHIVOLCS, Mayon Volcano Observatory. Today I'll give a short talk on the updates on the Camarines Sur earthquake swarm just this October 2021. But first, the talk will involve mostly background on earthquakes and what to expect in an earthquake, and some of our results of the observations on the Kanaman earthquake, and then what we can expect and what we can do during an earthquake and after an earthquake. Okay, so let's first start with some background introductions. Probably for the geology majors, you're probably aware of this, but for some, but still, let's be more, let's level up with each other. So the occurrence or distribution of earthquakes and volcanoes in the world is not random, but occurs rather concentrated in narrow zones or very distinct zones. And this is particularly well observed in the Pacific region, so-called Pacific Ring of Fire, in which the Philippines is right at the edge of this, right at the western edge of this region. That's why we are so. That's why earthquakes and volcanic eruptions are quite common in the Philippines. So delving in more deeply into the tectonics of the Philippines, so the Pacific Plate itself, where the edge of the Pacific, where the Pacific Ring of Fire is found at the edge, it's actually made up of much smaller plates. There's the Pacific Plate, and then the much smaller Philippine Sea Plate, which is pushing up again right against the Philippines. And then to the north, or rather northwest, there is the Eurasian Plate, which is again pushing back against the Philippine Sea Plate. And then to the south of the Philippines, there is the Australian Plate pushing north. So from this, we can see that the tectonic setting in the Philippines is very, very active and quite complicated. And from these tectonic forces, you can actually have an indication of why the Philippines itself is shaped the way it is. So, para siyang kuba na isang tao na napilipit, yung na kuba na dahil sa sobrang lakas ng mga tectonic forces. So, a brief backgrounder of earthquakes. So, earthquakes usually occur at what we call fault lines. And again, and then you probably will ask, what is a fault? So, a fault is simply a break or a zone of weakness in the rocks where displacement or movement has occurred and can later occur again. And these fault lines can extend hundreds of kilometers across the Earth's surface and then extend downwards tens of kilometers. So one of the most famous fault lines in the world is San Andreas Fault. It's so famous they even made a movie about it. And then, but of course, while we can find a lot of faults in the world, PHIVOLCS mainly concerns with what is called the active faults. So these are faults that have moved in the last 10,000 years, either with historical records, such as those found by the previous speaker, Professor Herona, or for the later part of the 20th century, meron ng instrumental observations. And of course, merong nakikita kaming mga landforms associated with active faulting. Okay. So these are the three types of faults. There is the normal fault, where the apparent movement of the fault is pulling apart from each other, moving away from each other. And then there is the reverse or thrust fault, where both sides of the fault, on both sides of the fault, is pushing against each other, and one is until one part overrides the other, or pushes up over the other. And then there's the strike-slip fault, which is where the apparent movement is mainly side to side. But of course, in reality, in the actual field, these actual faults are a combination of these types of faults. So then, movement along the fault will then, a sudden movement along the fault will then result in an earthquake. And then every time an earthquake occurs, there are actually three questions on people's minds. Firstly, where is it located? So to locate an earthquake, seismologists refer to two locations. First is the focus, and this is the actual point in the earth where the earthquake started, or where the fault failure along the fault occurred. And this is usually given by latitude, longitude, and the depth. That's why in some bulletins last week, we have location of the earthquake was north 35 kilometers north, let's say north 35 west of Kanaman, and at a depth of 1 kilometer. So that's the focus. That's where the break occurred. And then there's the epicenter, which is the point directly on the surface of the focus. And this is found using latitude and longitude. And then doon na namin nire-refer kung ano yung closest na population center. And then the second question is, how strong was the earthquake? So in seismology, we refer to the strength of an earthquake by two numbers. First is intensity, or the shaking, and this scale estimates the effect of the earthquake at a particular site. And this is relative, generally described by those who have felt or observed by the people around you, yung effects niya, effects ng earthquake dun sa tao. And in general, this is higher at the epicenter and denoted by Roman numerals. For example, I, IV, IX. And then the second one is magnitude, or the energy released by the earthquake at the point of origin. And then this is measured by instruments, and magnitude is absolute. So anywhere you go, if an earthquake occurs at magnitude 4.3, that is always magnitude 4.3 anywhere. And then and the difference between these two is that again, intensity varies. In general, the farther you are from the epicenter, or where the earthquake occurred, the smaller the intensity, or the lower the intensity. So PHIVOX measures the intensity scale using the PHIVOX earthquake intensity scale. This is this is denoted by numbers from 1 to 10, with intensity 1 being scarcely perceptible, and then intensity 10 being completely devastating. And usually, the intensity, we can expect damages from an earthquake at intensity 6 and above. So for those at intensity 5 and below, if the structure or building you have is built up to specifications or standards, it should not be damaged, or if there is any damage, it would be likely be superficial and not structurally damaging. So we can, the way to remember what is magnitude and intensity, we can think of an earthquake as a light bulb. And the wattage of the light bulb is the magnitude. So, for example, if the light bulb is 20 watts, it will always be 20 watts, whether you are close to the light bulb or farther away from it, whereas the brightness can be analogous to the intensity. So in general, the closer you are to the light bulb, the stronger or brighter it is. And then the last question is, what type of earthquake is it? So we have two types of earthquake. There is the tectonic earthquake, and or earthquakes produced by sudden movement along faults or plate boundaries. And then there are volcanic earthquakes, which are caused by movement of magma beneath volcanoes. So for this topic, we'll only be talking about tectonic earthquakes. So the Philippines is a seismically active country. On average, PHIVOX records about 20 earthquakes per day. And per year, we record about between 100 to 150 felt earthquakes. So most of the earthquakes that PHIVOX records is actually not felt. So mabababa yung mga magnitudes niya, and yung intensity sometimes lower than intensity 1. And then for the past, although if you look at the map, the Philippines seems to be peppered by earthquakes. Over the past 400 years, we've only, the Philippines has only experienced about approximately 100 destructive earthquakes. So moving much more closer to the seismicity or earthquake occurrences in Region 5, this is the map. So as you can see from, I will no longer be mentioning how many the significant earthquakes in Region 5, at least for the historical record. But there are some, you can see from the map that the Bicol region is tectonically active. So the most recent, of course, before itong Kanaman earthquake was last year, yung sa Masbate, magnitude 6.6, August 2020 earthquake. So for Camarines Sur, we've actually had a very destructive earthquake back in 1907, magnitude 7.4 earthquake, and this figure shows a simulation of that earthquake. So using one of our softwares here, in-house softwares here in Evox, we use the REDAS software. We can simulate an earthquake and then its effects on the in the region. So here we simulated the 1907 magnitude 7.4 Camarines earthquake, and we found that near yung hotter part, yung red parts, yan yung highest intensity at intensity 8, which is very destructive. And then it is felt up to about intensity 5, which is still very strong and can still cause panic. So yung intensity 5 was very similar to yung nangyari nung October 14, 10 p.m. earthquake, and umabot intensity 5 sa Catanduanes, itong 1907 earthquake na ito. And then here are the possible earthquake generators in Region 5. So as you can see, let's look first at the map of the Philippines. So if you look at the map of the Philippines, we have some purple lines and the red lines. So for the red lines, looking at yung dun sa dun sa Philippines, yung sa Philippines itself, we can notice a red line or a series of red lines starting at northern Luzon and then going down towards southern Mindanao. So, and it cuts across almost the whole Philippines, and this is called the Philippine Fault Zone. So this is the most active fault line in the Philippines. So a lot of our earthquakes in the Philippines can be attributed to this to the movement of this Philippine fault. And of course, besides the Philippine fault, we can also experience earthquakes coming from, for example, for the Philippine Trench, dito sa yung purple line dito sa eastern side ng Philippines, and then there's also movement along the Manila Trench dito naman sa western side dito sa West Philippine Sea, and then south dito sa Negros Trench. And then moving on towards the zooming in to Bicol region, you can see some segments of the Philippine Fault Zone cutting across dun sa Bicol region. And we can identify at least two segments or branches of the Philippine Fault cutting across yung Bicol region. The first one, of course, the most prominent is yung Masbate segment. Yung August 2020 earthquake was caused by movement ng Philippine Fault dito sa Masbate. And then there's another segment there of the Philippine Fault which cuts cuts along the coastline of Camarines Sur. Yan pwedeng mag-generate din ng mga earthquakes. So this is so last October 14, 2021 at around 10:08 p.m. we experienced a magnitude 4.3 earthquake. The epicenter is near Kanaman, Camarines Sur. And this earthquake was tectonic in origin and was felt at maximum intensity of intensity 5 sa Kanaman, Camarines Sur. And then habang while moving away from Kanaman, lumilit or the intensity becomes lower, as I said earlier. So yung smallest intensity was felt at intensity 2 sa Buhi, Camarines Sur, and at Legazpi City, or at least yung mga reported na intensities. PHIVOX also deployed a few instrumental intensity meters, and these intensity meters recorded intensity 6 at Pili, Camarines Sur, intensity 5 sa Sipocot, intensity 3 sa Iriga City, intensity 2 sa Legazpi City, and intensity 1 sa Mercedes, Camarines Norte. Okay. And using our Swift solution, we found yung moment tensor solution ng earthquake. And we from yung simulations, we found that yung movement, primary movement ng fault line, kung may fault line man dyan, was a strike-slip event. So this is probably also the reason why we can, yung may mga nagtatanong kung magkaka-tsunami because the movement was strike-slip and it was inland, there's walang chance na magkaroon ng tsunami dito. Okay, so as of yesterday at 7 a.m. and even up to today, 7 a.m. We've recorded a total of 27 earthquakes, but most of these are instrumental, or mostly just recorded by seismometers. But and out of these 27 recorded earthquakes, we plotted about 17. So these red dots in the map show where these earthquakes are plotting or are locating. So we can see medyo kalat-kalat pa yung mga plotting niya. And yung magnitude range nga ng mga earthquakes dito is yung highest magnitude 4.3 and the lowest is magnitude 1.7. And nagbabari din yung depth niya between 1 and about 40 kilometers depth. And so far, ang largest magnitude was yung pinakaunang earthquake at 10:08 p.m. Magnitude 4.3 with maximum felt intensity intensity 5, which is quite strong. So this is the list of the plotted earthquakes. You can see this on our website for you to check. And then much more bigger map of the plotting. So most of these actually are plotting dito sa dito sa bandang Kanaman and Naga. A few are plotting, some may mga offshore, pero this is probably may mga offshore din. But mostly nasa lupa. Okay. So again, the largest intensity was intensity 5. So describe natin what people felt during the earthquake. So so describe ko lang yung what one feels at intensity 4, which is moderately strong. So intensity 4 generally felt by people indoors, or some are felt by people outdoors kung very sensitive, but generally yung mga resting people nakakaramdam nito. And you can probably observe some objects like mga nakabitin na mga ilaw can be swaying, some windows and doors may rattle, and of course yung mayroong rumbling sounds. I think this is one of the most prominent na observed daw during the earthquake. Some rumbling sound was heard prior to naramdaman yung shaking itself. And then intensity 5 is quite strong na. These are felt by people both indoors and outdoors, and those who are sleeping can be awakened. So ito na I think ito yung pinaka naramdaman ng mga tao. And then napilitan talaga silang lumabas sa mga bahay. And then although wala namang nakaramdam ng intensity 6, I think intensity 6 ito na yung meron ng mga mag-expect na tayo na merong damages and some may mga reports ng landslides. Okay. So again po, if we look at the graph, this is the upper graph shows the sequence of events nung Kanaman earthquake. So the blue bar is the recorded earthquake. So nag-start yung pinakamaraming the most number of recorded earthquakes occurred during day 1, immediately after nung October 14. So about 20 yung recorded na earthquakes. About half doon is around 10 are plotted or nalocate namin. And then pagdating day 2, isa lang yung na-record and na-plot na earthquake. Pagdating ng day 3, medyo dumami ng konti, 4 na yung recorded, pero pagdating ng day 4 and day 5, isa na lang yung na-record na mga earthquakes. And then looking at yung time series graph nung earthquake occurrence, we can see na medyo yung frequency or intervals between earthquakes is medyo umahaba as the days go by. And as of today, yung last na earthquake occurrence was in the early morning of
meron ng passport.
So,
okay.
ano ba yung what kind of hazards can we expect during an earthquake? So, firstly, there's the ang first, obviously mararamdaman ng mga tao during an earthquake would be yung ground shaking. And this is just, ito yung swaying na nararamdaman natin during an earthquake, and then sometimes accompanied by rumbling sounds. If you see mayroong video there was a lady who was recording, I don't know, para sa school niya, making a video record for I think a school project, and then suddenly napatigil siya because may parang rumbling sound siya na narinig, and then the shaking started. So yan yung unang hazard. And then the next hazard is probably yung surface faulting. This can occur during an earthquake kasi, especially if you're near the fault line. So the ground will practically magkakaroon ng rupture, punit dun sa ground. So as you can see dun sa picture, meron tayong rice field, and you can see yung mga pilapil niya. Normally this would probably be straight connected with each other, pero as the arrow shows, merong ground rupture and nagkahiwa-hiwalay yung mga pilapil. And then next is next possible hazard during an earthquake would be liquefaction, and this occurs primarily in places na matubig. If you're near a river, a lake, near the coastline, or yung floodplains. And I think Camarines Sur it has a large floodplain. I remember nagbabaha dito sa last year, di ba, nung after ng typhoon Rolly and Ulysses, di ba, medyo matagal yung baha diyan sa after Naga, pagdating ng Milaor. So that's a very big danger, kung magkaroon ng liquefaction. So liquefaction occurs when during an earthquake nasi-squeeze out yung water sa ilalim. Normally kasi in swampy or waterlogged areas, most of the support of the building or structure on top is borne by a mixture of yung soil and water. Now during an earthquake, the water is squeezed out, leaving only the soil, and then so pag nabawasan na yung support na yon, may tendency na yung mga structure sa taas. For example, this building, lulubog siya. Oh, that's danger. And then next danger, if you are near a mountain, hill, pwedeng magkaroon ng mga landslides after or during an earthquake. So, for PWOC's part, meron kaming yung seismic monitoring network, and this consists about 112 stations, seismic stations distributed nationwide. About 74 of these are real-time seismic stations connected via satellite dun sa main office. And about 36 staff controlled, meaning merong kaming personnel doon, and that includes yung mga volcano observatories dun sa mga monitored volcanoes. So this is some pictures ng setup ng PWOC's monitoring site. So we have yung remote site connected via satellite to the data receiving center at the main office in Quezon City. So nakikita agad namin if there is any earthquake, transmitted agad yon sa main office. And so this is the seismic monitoring map. The leftmost map shows yung current map ng seismic network ng as of this year. And then yung middle map naman, we have some bukod sa nagmo-monitor ng mga earthquakes, we also monitor any tsunami occurrence. So these blue, green, and yellow circles denote yung mga stations namin located around the country used to monitor tsunamis. And using that monitoring network, ito yung mga nare-record namin ng mga earthquakes so far as of October 2021. Ito yung mga earthquakes na na-record or na-detect ng Philippine Seismic Network. So as of 2011, PWOC's has been expanding yung seismic monitoring network niya. So this animation shows yung expansion ng monitoring network namin since 2011 to present. And this is because of this expansion, we can lumaki na rin yung detection limit ng PWOC's especially yung mga low magnitudes. So yung hotter colors or yung mga red, very red na colors, yun yung areas na malakas yung detection namin ng mga earthquakes. While yung yellow, medyo mahina, pero still na-detect namin. So for magnitude 4 and above, you can see na yung dito sa rightmost figure, you can see na almost more than 95% of the Philippines is already covered, especially for large earthquakes of magnitude 4 and above. So then, what can we do as citizens? Anong pwede nating magawa before an earthquake occurs? So, firstly, we have to prepare. We have to cooperate with our DRM offices to prepare an evacuation and response plan, and also conduct drills kung ano gagawin natin during an earthquake. So here are some diagrams ng some offices and communities, anong ginawa nila. Nakapag-designate sila ng evacuation plan, alin yung mga safe, saan yung evacuation area. Ito naman, yung rightmost figure shows yung tsunami evacuation plan sa Santo Domingo. So kapag merong danger ng tsunami, yung mga bahay near the coastline, kailangan evacuate towards yung higher ground or more towards inland. And then of course, before an earthquake occurs, we recommend na mag-prepare ng yung emergency kit, or sometimes called yung mga go bags natin. So that bag contains first aid kits, water purification tablets, if possible, an AM and FM radio set, water, of course, and some food, tools and ropes, candle, yung mga lighting items, na candles or flashlights, blankets, and then some personal hygiene kits. And of course, pencils and paper pa if you need to write down something. And of course, dahil pandemic ngayon, of course, huwag kakalimutan yung alcohol, face masks, and face shields during evacuations. And then, how do we respond to a strong, during a strong ground shaking scenario? So, firstly, before an earthquake occurs, we have to inspect our houses and buildings. We have to ask ourselves the question: how safe is this building or our house? So, to help people answer that question, PHIVOX back in 2011 made an experiment. We constructed 2 model houses. So model A, this is the rightmost house. This is the house made up to standards, up to standard. That is, sinunod nito yung structural code of the Philippines. So in both construction and materials. So yung hollow blocks na ginamit, 6 inches, yung vertical, yung rebars na ginamit, yung steel bars, 10 millimeter yung diameter, and yung during construction, siniksik, hindi lang simpleng yung mortar, yung semento, hindi lang simpleng binuhos, talagang siniksik talaga siya, compacted. And then model B is these are houses just typically constructed cheaply, or yung backyard na na method. So yung hollow blocks is 4-inch lang, yung rebars, steel bar 6 millimeter, and then yung in an effort to, of course, to save on concrete, just yung pinor lang yung concrete. So these 2 houses are what is typically found. These are the houses typically found in the Philippines. So what PHIVOX did is nag-undergo ng shaking table test for these 2 houses. So again, yung right house is the one that's built up to engineering standard, and then the left one is the non-engineered. Okay, so from the back, the rightmost is now the non-engineered house. So you can see during the initial shake, na unang bumagsak or nasira yung non-engineered house. Okay. So that shaking was equivalent to intensity 7 or 8 na shaking. So of course, eventually pareho rin naman silang bumagsak, pero as you can see, mas survivable, or at least for the engineered house, in the engineered model, it gave you time to evacuate. So based on the experiment, PHIVOX made a 12-point questionnaire na pwedeng sagutin ng isang tao on yung how his house was built. So this questionnaire is also available via Google Play. You can download this to your cell phone, to your smartphone, and so you can assess yung building nyo or yung house nyo if it is indeed safe during an earthquake. So if you score 11 to 12 points, your house is likely very safe during an earthquake. But if it scores lower than that, 10 to 8, 10 or below, you you probably need to check with an expert or a civil engineer to assess your house. So next, how do you response to a strong ground shaking scenario? So during an earthquake, you have to ask yourself, what are the safe spots, and then what do you do? So PHIVOX recommends you drop, cover, and hold. And then what do you do afterwards? And then para mas maging ano sa atin, yung mas innate na sa atin on what to do during an earthquake, PHIVOX recommends conducting drills. And I think yung ano naman natin, NDRRMC holds quarterly national simultaneous earthquake drills. And I think this coming November, they will again be holding another earthquake drill, and I strongly suggest that we all participate in that para alam natin kung anong gagawin during an earthquake. So kanina, no? So we have to sa number 2 plan, di ba, tinatanong natin where are the safe spots. So sa mga bahay natin or sa mga buildings natin, we have to identify ano yung mga safe zones and ano yung mga danger zones. So safe zones, these are probably under yung study tables, the corner of your rooms near yung columns and beams, kasi this is usually the strongest part of the house. Yung probably yung load-bearing na doorway or wall. Then kung nasa building ka, outside elevator shafts are yung very strong yan, pero don't go inside, of course, don't go inside the elevator itself. And of course, yung mas pinaka-safe place is yung open or clear areas. And yung danger zones is near windows and glass, kasi pwedeng mabasag yan and tamaan ka. Bookshelves or any furniture na pwedeng nagtapal o bumagsak. Hanging objects, yun, in danger zone, yung inside elevators. Don't use an elevator during an earthquake. Yung power lines, poles na pwedeng bumagsak, and of course yung between tall buildings. And kung yung bridges and flyovers, kapag during an earthquake, try to avoid these places. So PHIVOX during an earthquake, PHIVOX recommends we practice the drop or duck, cover, and hold approach. So ang sinasabi lang dito, during an kapag nakaramdam tayo ng ground shaking, strong ground shaking, try to duck under a sturdy table and hold on to it, and antayin yung tumigil yung ground shaking. Or kung wala naman, at least try to protect your head, something like maybe a sturdy book or even your arms. Now, why do we advocate the drop, cover, and hold? Some people ask, why not just run towards the exit? Well, it depends on the strength or the intensity of the shaking or earthquake. So, for example, in this case, this is intensity 8, between intensity 7 and 8, very strong shaking. This was taken in 1995 in Kobe, Japan, a very large earthquake there. As you can see, during the shaking itself, hindi makatayo yung mga tao. So as you can see, the door is only about probably 5 meters away. Pero you can see yung mga tao hindi sila nakatakbo palabas. So kailangan mo lang kaya nare-recommend namin na antayin na munang tumigil yung shaking bago lumabas ng building. Okay. So ito yung so minodify ng PHIVOX yung response during an earthquake because of the current COVID-19 situation. So priority yung priority yung earthquake evacuation over COVID-19 stay-at-home or quarantine rules. But of course, the risks of of COVID spread are still very high, so kailangan nating i-manage yan during evacuation. So please don't forget yung masks nyo and face shields during evacuations. Ito, yan yung 6 steps during an earthquake. So first, during an earthquake, duck, cover, and hold. And after yung shaking, saka lang tayo lalabas in the fastest, safest possible way. And then, of course, dahil COVID, yung social or physical distancing should be practiced 1 meter away from each other. Okay? And then, walk briskly but do not run. Huwag tayong magtulakan. And then, proceed to the nearest open space while observing physical distancing. And then, if you, kung malakas talaga yung shaking, let us wait for yung i-assess ng mga experts or yung building manager kung safe ba yung building na kung saan tayo nag-evacuate bago bumalik after nung earthquake. So ayan, in more detail. So again po, if you're evacuating, please do not forget to wear your mask and face shield. Okay. So again po, please proceed to the nearest open space after an earthquake while observing physical distancing, and wait for the building manager or an expert, a structural expert, to say that the building you just evacuated from is safe before going back. So that's it. I think if you need any clarifications, any further information, you can reach us to our website. We also have a presence in our on social media, Facebook and Twitter. And of course, meron din kaming, if those who are interested in learning more about earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis, or any geotectonic phenomena, we also have hindi lang nakalagay dito, but we have a YouTube channel. Salamat po. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Paul Alanis, for that very informative and nuanced discussion of earthquakes with particular emphasis in the Bicol region and in Camarines Sur. Now, before we proceed to the open forum, may we invite 2 reactors from Partido State University. First, we have Mr. Diosdado Dizon, instructor of BS Geology from Partido State University. Sir?
Good morning kay Professor Alanis, kay Dr. Herona. And magandang mga presentation niyo. Okay, I'll have to add some figures that were I see it's important towards that earthquake last October 14. I will try to share screen. Pwede mag-share screen. Can I have
noted, sir. Mike, please allow him.
Pwede ba?
Yes, sir.
I'll try.
You may try it now, sir.
Okay. I'll have to. So. This is the Philippine fault. It's say left lateral or sinistral. This portion of the fault, the left side moves down and the right side, and the right side moves upward. So during my during our when I was an employee of the MGB, we have we have identified some of these faults. By the way, this map is from Dr. Lagmay's article. It's the structural elements of the southern portion of Bicol. So, makikita nyo, itong mga triangles are the volcanoes and the dotted lines are the faults. So, ang pinaka naunsa ang where is Kanaman. Kanaman is here. This one. This is Kanaman area. So, makikita nyo na our side has plenty of parallel faults. We have Hilawan fault, which is located in Catanduanes. I'm familiar with this fault. The Minas fault is in Presentacion, Caramoan area. Malayo na yun. But I am doubtful of the San Miguel fault zone that cuts the north, Camarines Norte, Camarines Sur, and portions of Albay going to TV. This is the what we call Cagraray, San Miguel, and Batan Island. It's cut by a Legazpi lineament zone. This ang Camarines Sur, ang Naga City, is bordered by the San Miguel fault and that Legazpi fault line. Beyond that Legazpi fault line is San Vicente Linao fault. Possible na digdiyo ang sa tuyang the source of that earthquake must be maybe the San Miguel fault or any faults that are covered by its activity. Okay. Thank you. So makikita nindo digdi, you will see here. You will see here that these faults occur in what we call the Philippine fault band. This is again the article from Dr. Lagmay. Structural elements of the southern portion of Bicol region. Makikita niyo on the right side of the bend, on the right side of the bend, you have several parallel faults. So makikita niyo na these are active faults on that area. Okay. And then ang sa left side left side here is now maybe in Masbate area and Ticao area having that alignment with the Philippine fault zone. Okay. Then iyan lang pwede ko ma-share ngayon. So, iyan, ito ay we have what we call the swarms. So, we have earthquake fault swarms. Ang nangyayari sa fault swarm kasi, nakakapasok ang fluids mo doon sa interstices ng fault. Kaya, nag-accumulate siya. And then after that, itong similar with liquefaction. Kung gagalaw siya because of that interstices filled fractures, it will now produce fault farms. Okay, that's it.
Mr. Moderator.
Okay, okay na. Okay.
Thank you very much, Sir
Mr.
Jusnada.
Moderator.
Yes, we recognize Honorable Gabriel Bordado.
Thank you very much. With due respect to Mr. Dizon, can we ask questions? Can we direct the questions to Dr. Alanis?
Yes.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Dr. Alanis has given us a rather clear picture of what to expect. Unlike typhoons, the occurrence of earthquakes cannot be predicted or projected. Is that correct, Dr. Alanis?
Yes, Congressman. When you say prediction, we have to qualify that. For example, yes,
Dr. Alanis.
if you want, when you say prediction, for example, you have to know when exactly the earthquake will occur and where exactly it will occur. And as I said earlier in the presentation, the Philippines has about the PHIVOX records on average every day 20 earthquakes. So I see a lot of these posts on social media by some some seers who say that be careful, there will be an earthquake tomorrow. Given the fact that the PHIVOX records 20 earthquakes per day, then likely he will be right, of course. But at the moment, the current technology of in seismology worldwide cannot really say when an earthquake occur. But we do know, well, firstly, we at least know where they will likely occur. PHIVOX so far has mapped out a lot of faults in the Philippines, and usually, so these are the possible places where an earthquake will occur. Second, there are some studies, of course, of prediction, but for the moment, most of these are theoretical. The best that we can do is give a what is called the recurrence interval between earthquakes. So, for example, since the early 2000s, we have been PHIVOX has been telling people to prepare for the big one, especially for the Valley Fault system here in Marikina, in Metro Manila. Because the recurrence interval of the fault here is between, some say, at least about 300 years. And so far from our calculations, it's already about right to occur. But again, while we say that there is an earthquake or the big one is possible, we still cannot say when exactly when it will occur.
Okay, Dr. Alanis. So, in other words, we cannot forecast the occurrence of earthquakes.
Not with the same as a typhoon.
Yeah, precisely.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have been getting all this fake news from the social media platforms, particularly the Facebook. So, coming from an expert like you, then this must be underscored, that the occurrence of earthquakes cannot be forecast, just like what happens with typhoons. Just like in the case of typhoons, we can forecast the activities of a forthcoming typhoon, but in the case of the earthquakes, we have no way at this stage to say categorically that an earthquake will occur within a specific time period?
Yes,
Doc
that is correct.
Alanes.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you very much. So at least we need to clear this up with a lot of people that we cannot project, we cannot forecast the occurrence of an earthquake. So we must be prepared.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Congressman Bordado, for that feedback. At this time, we continue with another reaction from a student of Partido State University. Let's welcome Miss Resabella Lara, a student of BS Geology.
So good morning, a wonderful morning to all of you who are here and live in this forum about earthquakes and Bicol and geological disaster awareness. So for our lectures, Dr. Danilo M. Hirona for his lecture on brief history of earthquakes in the Philippines and Bicol region. To Dr. Paul Carson Alanis for the updates on October 2021 seismic activities in Bicol region. Thank you for the enriching and edifying lectures which imported with us with wit and evidence. So I will not be delving more into a technical reaction about the topics, for I'm not yet in the position to do such. So in the brief history of earthquakes in the Philippines and Bicol region lecture, I find it interesting that in a brief moment, it took us back into the most relevant records of earthquakes in the Philippines and Bicol. So one of which is about the 1628, the earliest record, and the 1711 with a local source, the Quaderno, and the 1848. So back in the days when there were still no too few seismic stations spread all over the Philippines, the historical catalog of earthquakes, or the time when seismic monitoring instruments were not existent or scarce in the Philippines, are giving us an insight of the actual events of the earthquake here. So that is why it's remarkable that we got to establish these accounts as early as the 1578 to 1898. So because it was 1892 according to Bautista and Bautista 2004, when instrumentally derived parameters are accessible and available. So, but over the years, with extensive and collaborative efforts and researches of various experts in geology and experts in different fields of expertise, we came up with an integrated and well-recorded accounts of seismic activities, which are improving time to time. So the need for a catalog nga po, since we're discussing the brief history of earthquakes in the Philippines, is crucial, since in establishing reliable and in-depth information on seismic hazard analysis. So yung brief history and yung catalog ng earthquakes in the Philippines, nakakapag-establish na tayo ng ganyan seismic hazard analysis para ma-make sure nga natin na yung, like the events of the October 2021 earthquakes, maging prepared ang mga residents. So, this leads us to how history and geology works hand in hand to give a wider view on the geology and the geologic hazards accompanying us, since we are a resident of one of the most tectonically active regions. Though it has to be taken into account that Philippines does not have a long period of instrumental earthquakes records, while we're a seismically active region nga. So, yun nga po, it is focusing to the present earthquake accounts, yung October 2021, the last week's earthquakes in Canacman and the nearby municipalities and cities shook different takes on different people nga po who felt the earthquakes. So, in the perspective of a geology student, it is an opportunity to integrate the knowledge that we have accumulated through the years of studying geology into the real life situations, such as the events that Dr. Paul Carson Alanis discussed. So, it gave us more field of interest to look into and more. So, since Dr. Paul Carson Alanis gave us a basic background on earthquakes, especially about the magnitude and intensity, nabigyan tayo ng scientifically based fact how active talaga yung Philippines and this seismically active na. So nung nangyari talaga yung October 2021, it opened discussion, a healthy discussion among the members of the geology community. So that being said, the students of geology, especially here in Bicol, and the geology professionals and other geology enthusiasts engage freely in the discussion using different social media outlets such as Facebook, Twitter, and Messenger. So where curious facts and questions were raised and talked about while still upholding the goal of understanding better the situation. So yun nga, yung concerns, pinaka-primary concerns nga na arise after that event is yung fake news. So there were circulating fake news na galing daw sa EDMERO, which is the Environment Disaster Management and Emergency Response Office ng Camarines Sur, and from Mr. Typhoon Mike Padua, which nagsasabi nga na magkakaroon ng possible earthquakes within 24 to 72 hours and magkakaroon daw ng tsunami. So this is how the dangers of fake news and misinformation, lalo na sa social media. So as a geology student, marami sa amin yung nag-engage talaga to battle this misinformation and tumulong doon sa mga pages, sa mga persons na nag-i-spread ng mga misinformation na to, dahil it is one of the dangers of related to earthquakes. So we have the roles and responsibilities as students na kahit hindi pa kami licensed yet. Yes, it is a great tool for us na ibahagi yung learnings namin to prevent the misinformation and ma-prevent yung panic and fear from the people, especially here in Bicol region. So, yun nga po, we have to just be ready in different situations, participate in earthquake drills and other, especially in the times of a pandemic where nag-iiba na yung response natin dapat sa mga ganitong situations, since we're battling with a pandemic na still ngayon kino-contain pa natin. So that's all lang naman po yung about the talk about this. We should continue learning and consulting to different experts regarding this para maging safe po tayo in the event of such things. So thank you so much and good morning to all of us.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hannah Risabella Lara and Sir Diosdado Dizon, for your reactions to our two speakers' lecture for this morning. So, in connection with that, Sir Jay Abawag said citizen science can be a great tool for the public to participate in data gathering relative to earthquakes as opposed to fake news in social media. And I would like to say that Ms. Hannah was correct in saying that geology students and even geology alumni of Partido State University were active on Facebook trying to vast fake news related to the earthquake that we had in the past days. Now we proceed to the question and answer portion, the open forum for this session. First, we have some questions here from Sir Jeff Curuno. Sir Paul, is there any association or correlation or just a pure coincidence lang that the recent Kanaman earthquake last October 15, 2021 was also the 8th anniversary of the very destructive magnitude 7.2 Bohol earthquake last October 15, 2013? May correlation daw po ba yun?
None po, none.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Now, another question from Sir Jeff. In a report released by VVOX last October 16, there is a mention about earthquake monitoring station located in San Jose, Camarines Sur. And you also flashed that in one of your slides this morning, sir. Station code is SCSP. Where po siya located? Unmanned station po ba siya?
Unfortunately, this is an unmanned station, remote site siya na autonomous site yan. In fact, I don't know. Alam ko lang yung coordinates niya, pero I've never been there myself. So I can't really say where it is. And as a general rule po, we try not to tell people where exactly our sites are kasi may instances na binabandalize. Okay, so as a matter of security, we try to keep yung information kung saan sila located, yung secret lang between us and yung LGU.
Yes, sir. So aside from the stations are in San Jose, not to mention their specific locations, saan pa po ba sa buong province or halimbawa sa 3rd district merong mga stations po?
Well, we actually have a volcano monitoring station, remote site again sa Isarog volcano itself, no? May bandang Ocampo. So, pangunahan ko na kayo, wala kaming nakikitang any indication na nagiging active or any abnormality with Isarog either before or during and after nitong earthquake na ito. So, alert level 0 pa rin siya. Although, Isarog volcano is an active volcano.
Thank you for that assurance, Sir Paul. Another question from Sir Jeff. In simple explanation po, Dr. Paul, can you educate us on how to plot the location of the epicenter, like 5 kilometers south, 36 degrees east of Kanaman?
Okay, this is very actually you don't really need yung ito kasi this is azimuthal mahirapan ka lang diyan. Yung bulletin namin, if I can flash my screen.
Yes, sir.
Is it okay? Oops, sorry.
Mike?
Okay. Here. Okay, here. Yung sa bulletin itself, you don't really need itong yung 3 kilometers north, 75 west of Kanaman. You can just use this po, yung ito, 13.65 degrees north, 123.14 degrees east. Yan, yung first two numbers na yan, you can just type that in Google Map or Google Earth and you can plot it already. You don't need to bother with this kasi this is just yung relative location ng earthquake sa nearest population center. Okay po?
For that, sir. So to our dear listening public, it's an advantage if we are able to navigate using Google Earth and Google Map po. So advantageous.
Yeah. Actually, I've been hearing a lot of people already doing this. For those who are interested to plot this. And,
yes, sir.
So yun lang po. Yung first two numbers lang for the location, yun na yun.
Yes. Thank you, sir. And I am reminded by the feedback of Miss Hannah earlier, talking about seismic hazard analysis and the catalog of earthquakes, and there is a possible collaboration that can be made between the geology program of Partido State University and the Center for Partido Studies, since we have Dr. Hirono with us, who specializes in the early colonial period, and maybe he can provide more information about earthquakes like what he discussed this morning. Now, another question from Ma'am Joanna Viva Plopenio. With this information, are there any building guidelines regarding putting up multi-story buildings in Camarines Sur? How many stories or how tall can a building be built and still be safe relative to earthquakes and other geological hazards in our province?
I am not an engineer, so I can't tell you specifically yung some of these, yung specifically how many stories or how tall the building can be built. Pero meron na after 1990, the 1990 Luzon earthquake, the government has been much more strict with regards to buildings. Na-institute na yung National Structural Code of the Philippines, which is actually continuously ina-update yan. I think almost every year ina-update yan para for engineers and architects to follow when it comes to building structures. So I suggest you consult yung city engineering office or DPWH with regards to that. And i-plug ko na rin nga pala, tomorrow may launching ng it's yung seismic amplification map ng Philippines. Bukas, ilo-launch bukas. You can check it out sa Facebook page namin for those who are interested, especially mga civil engineers. Please check that out.
Thank you, Sir Paul. In connection with that po, maybe a second portion of this webinar would be to invite some authorities from the from the DPWH for the discussion of the building standards and codes in the province or even in the region, as pointed out here by Sir Jomar. Now, another question from Miss Mary Grace Ebardo. Good morning, sir. Does a small earthquake mean that, or what is the possibility that a small earthquake or relatively weak earthquake could lead to a stronger earthquake?
Well, it's certainly possible po, no? Magiging yung tinatawag na foreshock, and then there's another yung before the main shock that has certainly occurred in other places. So there's that possibility, although with regards kung mangyayari yan sa Kanaman, I cannot really say kasi as I already told earlier, yung prediction natin, yung prediction, science of the earthquake prediction, medyo hindi pa ganun ka-advanced. So there's that possibility po talaga na mangyari yun, yung scenario na yan.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, sir. Sir Gab.
So, in other words, Doc Calanes, we just don't have aftershocks, but we also have foreshocks. Medyo nakakatakot na yan.
Yes, yes.
Na meron kang relatively weak earthquake, that could be the foreshock for a stronger earthquake. All the while, we thought ang pinag-uusapan lang, ang pinag-uulayan lang, aftershocks. So in this case, we have 4 shocks. Dr. Alanes.
Yes, it has occurred po in seismically active regions. For example, sa Masbate. Of course, dahil dun yung very active yung Philippine fault zone doon. Pero how do we know po ba? It's still very hard nga po to yung mag-predict. When do we say that this earthquake is the foreshock? Pwede kasing ano lang siya, pwedeng the earthquake could have occurred and then yun ay maximum. For example, let's say yung sa Kanaman, ano lang po natin, hypothetical discussion lang, magnitude 4.3. So, is this the main shock? We don't know po until after nagkaroon ng sumunod na magnitude 4.2. So, then we can say na ano na siya. So, yung main shock was the 4.3. And then bababa to magnitude 1.7 and so on. But in some cases like in Masbate last year, merong medyo relatively strong na earthquake na nangyari about a few days before yung main magnitude 6.6 August 19 earthquake sa Masbate. But then masasabi lang namin na foreshock siya, possible foreshock siya after na po nangyari yung main shock.
After the fact.
After the fact na po, unfortunately. That is the the state of yung earthquake prediction natin. And as an aside po, actually my research interest is yung prediction itself, both of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. So for the science, yung prediction ng volcanic eruptions, so far mas advanced yung doon, yung field na yon kaysa sa earthquakes, unfortunately.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, in connection with the prediction, sir, there is a question here from Javier Nacario. Is there a possibility that a certain climatic condition could trigger an earthquake? In particular, he asks if the rate of earthquake increases during cold weather. Is there such a connection, sir?
No po. Unfortunately, we do not see any correlation between climate and the number of earthquakes. So it can occur at any time. Earthquakes can occur at any time, especially if na-exceed na nung stress dun sa fault yung minsan before an earthquake kasi naglalak muna yung fault line. So pag na-exceed na yung friction ng locking, saka gagalaw yung fault line. And kapag na-exceed yun, whether it is the height of the dry season or the wet season, gagalaw talaga yung fault na yun. Magkakaroon talaga ng earthquake. So actually one of the things yung sa prediction na tinitingnan is yung ginagawa ng PHIVOX ngayon, current research, is hinahanap namin alin ba yung mga fault lines na nakalock ngayon, active faults na hindi gumagalaw. And then we study if there is some merong build up ng pressure doon sa lugar na yon, and then yun yung pinag-aaralan namin if it can be used to predict when yung earthquake mag-occur. Dahil na-exceed na yung locking ng friction.
Thank you, sir. Regarding what you mentioned, sir, about the pressure na nag-exceed po or naaabot na po yung limit, is there such a physical manifestation na gano'n na nga po yung nangyayari?
Okay. So, ang tinitingnan namin, well, sa physically, I'm not sure kung merong possible. Pero, for example, sa instruments namin, for example, we have several global positioning systems installed following the Philippine fault zone. We have and then minomonitor namin yung mga yung GPS sites na yon kung merong movement, and usually pretty consistent yung movement, let's say mga 10 centimeters a year. Pero after a while makakahalata kami that some GPS stations are not moving or bumababa yung movement. So we can see na probably yung dun sa area na yon yung fault is locked. So yun ang mga lugar na kailangan bantayan. And then there's also yung concept ng seismic gap. So if you have an area, a general area na merong mga clusters ng earthquakes, and then merong isang part ng isang area doon na walang nag-occur na earthquake pero alam mo na may fault line, that area of the fault could be locked. And then we can probably say na merong doon, nagbi-build up ng pressure doon, and then pwedeng magkaroon ng earthquake doon in the future. But as to when, kung kailan siya bibigay, yun ang hindi pa natin alam.
Alright, sir. Kung kanina po ang tanong ay tungkol sa climatic factors, another question from Sir Jeff here is there a correlation between the alignment of the sun and the other planets, like causing earthquake due to gravitational attraction?
Okay. In some, kasi, well, there is yung science niyan is there is a science to it, because in some planets in the solar system natin, there are for example sa Jupiter, yung mga moons niya, and ganun din sa Saturn, dahil sa sobrang lakas ng gravitational forces na ini-exert niya dun sa mga sa moon na nakapaligid sa kanya, nagkakaroon ng seismic and even volcanic activity. But in the case of the Earth po, with regards to the moon and the sun, masyadong malayo yung distance para magkaroon ng effect yung gravitational pull. So theoretically pwede po, pero in the case of the Earth po, hindi it's not plausible po. Okay po ba?
Sorry, nakamute po pala ako. Thank you, sir. In connection with that, another question from Ms. Joanna Hapin is there a connection between the cosmic rays or astronomical? You mentioned already about the planets and the sun having far connection, but the other cosmic rays, or for example, I'm thinking of a meteor that, for example, biglang dumaan po sa isang particular na lugar na may certain close distance or what?
Well, it's possible po na magkaroon ng earthquakes and even a tsunami kung mag-pass very close sa Earth yung isang meteor, especially if it is sufficiently large, kagaya nung nakita natin sa mga pelikula. So that is possible na mangyari. Pero with regards yung sinasabi mo yung cosmic rays, I think you see this, meron yung connection dun sa isang Facebook page na solar flares. Ito ba yun? Baka ito yun.
Probably, sir.
Yes po, sir.
Okay, that is merong I think merong misreading kasi dun sa ano na yun, dun sa science niya. Yung solar flares, sabihin ko na wala siyang effect kasi if the solar flare is strong enough to cause an earthquake, it would be strong enough to kill human beings na rin. Yes, I mean, imagine yung force na ini-exert niya sa earth para magkaroon ng lindol. So dapat maapektuhan na rin yung mga tao kung ganun kalakas yung effect ng solar flares. And so far, ang solar flares can only affect people. For example, humihina yung reception ng yung mga radyo, nagkakaroon ng static. Yung TV natin nagkakaroon ng yung minsan nawawala yung reception or nagkakaroon ng mga ghosting. Parang nagiging dalawa yung tao dun sa sa screen. Pero apart from that, wala pong effect yun sa earthquakes.
Okay. Another question from the participants, from Miss Angelica Lasala. Was there any recorded occurrence of the liquefaction in Bicol region?
Okay. I think Professor Hirona would be more knowledgeable in that. But I think during the 1800s, late 1800s, there were some reports na nung nagkaroon ng earthquake. There was some reports of sinking of yung mga houses dito sa Nabwa and Iriga. And yung may reports din na merong bell tower na na nag-tilt daw. So that could be an indication of yung liquefaction. And as you know nga, alam naman natin, majority of Camarines Sur is a floodplain, di ba? So highly waterlogged yung area talaga. So that is a good, very prone sa liquefaction yung lugar.
Okay, thank you, sir. Another question, a student from Miss Maris Francia Delfino. May connection po ba yung subduction plate na nasa ilalim ng Bicol sa earthquake noong nakaraang araw?
Most of the yung earthquakes last week occurred at yung depth niya is less than 50 kilometers. So kung yung subduction plate yung dito sa Philippine Trench, kung saan kaya bakit meron tayong may mga bulkan tayo, Isarog, Iriga, Mayon, Bulusan. That's yung depth ng subduction plate. For example, beneath Mayon volcano is already about 100 to 125 kilometers yung depth nun. So pagdating dito sa and probably kung sa Isarog, that would be at the same depth na rin. So pagdating dito sa Kanaman, Naga, sobrang lalim na rin nun. And since yung nakukuha naming depth is at 50 kilometers, so walang effect yung subduction doon. So this is purely movement, dahil also because of yung focal mechanism solution namin, it shows na strike slip. This is likely caused by movement ng yung Philippine fault, which is strike slip, yung sense of motion. Sir, naka-mute ka po.
Sorry po. So, you mentioned, sir, about strike, yung sabi niyo po kanina na nasa Kanaman. So, are there other areas, sir, na ganun din po yung movement ng mga faults or plates in Camarines Sur or in Bicol?
the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is yung yung Philippine Fault Zone, strike slip yan. It's sa Masbate. So, ano yan? That's left lateral yung movement niya. Meaning yung the block in front of you across the fault line is moving towards the left, while the block where you're standing from is moving to the right. Most of yung most of the fault lines sa Pilipinas is yung mga strike slip yan. Bihira yung although meron ding mga may mga thrust faults and normal faults. Usually sa mga bulkan ang mga faulting diyan kung nagkakaroon man is mga normal faults. Kasi merong magma na umaakyat, tinutulak niya, so binibreak niya yung mga bato sa taas, and then you produce normal faults.
Another question here, which is a practical one, from Miss Jessica Gutierrez. My question po is about engineered houses and non-engineered houses. Paano po masasabi na safe nga ang engineered house kesa sa ginawa lang po ng mismong may-ari o ng mga hindi naman talaga engineer, pero matibay kesa doon sa gawa nga po ng engineer, pero pagdating ng lindol, bagsak naman.
That's an interesting question. Like we said nga po, you have to consult an engineer or an expert if you have doubts. Yung tool na pinakita ko po, which you can download sa to your smartphone, that is just a self-assessment. Ultimately po, ang huling last say would be yung engineer, experienced na engineer.
We have another question here. And regarding your the self-check for earthquake safety na pwede pong ma-download, how about, sir, is it applicable wherever houses are situated? Like for example, sa mga mountainous areas and coastal areas, equally applicable din po ba yung assessment nun?
For lang po yan, for yung construction and the materials used. Now, with regards kung location, ibang hazard na ang, I think, problema ang issue. Like for example, if you are na coastline, I think ang primary hazard na kailangan mong bantayan is during an earthquake is yung tsunami, right? And or a liquefaction event. But mostly tsunami. So, yung the self-assessment tool will only tell you if the structure you're in will withstand a strong earthquake. That is kung yung earthquake mo was about as strong as yung 1990 Luzon earthquake. So you can be assured na tatayo pa siya, and giving you enough time, as yung dun sa experiment na nakita natin, nag-collapse din naman pareho yung buildings, pero naunang nasira and probably danger catastrophically yung non-engineered na non-standard na house.
Okay, sir. From Sir Andres Bonifacio, Dr. Alanis, you mentioned about observation on lack fault line. In this, if there is a continuing rain in a particular region, could it be possible that there would be an unlocking of faults and result to possible earthquakes?
That's a hard question kasi in some there is yung tinatawag nating fracking. In some countries ginagawa nila ito, parang nakakapag-induce sila ng mga earthquakes kapag nag-i-inject sila ng tubig and ng tubig sa ground. And minsan may tinatamaan na fault line, nai-induce nila na gumalaw yung na magkaroon ng earthquake. Pero you need to be yung kailangan talaga very very large pressure, yung tipong as an example, sa geothermal areas, for example sa Tiwi, and then dito sa may Makiling Banahaw, nag-i-inject sila ng water sa ilalim ng lupa para mag-create ng steam. And na-induce nila na magkaroon ng mga earthquakes. Pero maliliit lang ito, yung mga micro tremor lang. Now, in the case of itong pag-ulan lang, I don't think so po. You need a lot of water and a lot of pressure. And you have to know saan mo i-inject para magkaroon ng earthquake. Yung artificial na earthquake.
Thank you, sir. From Miss Hannah Lara, now the Japan or the Japan Meteorological Agency analyzes and predicts the approximate location of the earthquake's epicenter. Since they are advanced in technology, this allows the JMA to notify people in affected prefectures by TV and radio if a strong earthquake is expected. Is it possible din po ba na magkaroon nito sa atin?
No po, just to clarify, that is not a prediction po. That is actually warning. Kasi nagkaroon na after ng earthquake. So that's an automated system po na kapag nagkaroon na ng earthquake, automatic na nagbo-broadcast. But that is not prediction kasi if you say prediction, you should say at least before an earthquake. And this is already, yung ginagawa ng JMA is after na po yan ng earthquake. So sinasabi lang nila na nagkaroon ng earthquake and then dahil sa sobrang bilis ng dare I say it, internet connection nila, mabilis talaga yung dissemination ng information. Actually yung sa PBOX, meron kaming yung bulletins namin has to go out. Merong kailangan siya less than 15 minutes. At least a few years ago yun yung minimum, pero I think binawasan na nila lately na kailangan less than 5 minutes kailangan mapalabas na. Ang problema is yung state of communication na infrastructure ng Pilipinas. Sa ngayon kasi nagsisimula pa lang tayo yung mag-broadcast, di ba? Yung NDRRMC, if you notice, or kung nakakatanggap kayo noon during typhoons, yung maingay na yung cellphone nyo biglang ang ingay-ingay, di ba? So medyo we're getting there, pero yun nga, kailangan pa may meron pa ring may gaps pa din. Pero on PBOX part, yun nga, nilalabas yung bulletin within minutes. Kaya you sometimes notice merong initial na bulletin number 1, and then after a few minutes or hours, merong bulletin number 2, number 3, and then parang yun yung ibig sabihin na pumapasok, mas marami ng data na pumapasok, mas nagiging refined kasi yung unang bulletin is still konting data pa lang yon. So yung hindi pa konting data pa lang yung ginamit noon, yung hindi pa refined yung solution noon.
Hello, Mon. Excuse me, Mon. Hello, Mon.
Yes, ma'am. I got your message po. Thank you very much for our participants. Actually, marami pa pong mga tanong ngayon, but inabot na po tayo ng oras. It's already 11:58. Parting words, Sir Paul, for our participants.
PBOX po continues to monitor the situation, and so far po from our observations, yung huling earthquake was last Monday early morning, and that was not even felt na po din sa Kanaman. So hopefully po tumigil na. That's enough na kasi nangyari na rin naman ito dito sa area nung December 1993, and tumigil din agad yung mga earthquakes. And lastly po, this has no relation po, this is all tectonic, this has no relation to any activity or any signs of reactivity ng Isarog volcano.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sir Paul, and especially important for our listeners na yun nga po, walang kinalaman ang Mount Isarog sa mga nakaraang lindol. Now, at this point in time, we would like to welcome our President, Dr. Ro, for his closing message. Sir?
Maray na aldaw po sa Indogabos, sa tuya po mga participants, asin mga parahinan nyo. Primero po, sa sakuyang idol, asin former boss sa Bicol Recurrence Development Program, Honorable Congressman Gabi Bordado, sa satuya pong Mayor, Honorable Mayor Nelson Ligacion, Dr. Paul Carson Alanis, ang satuya pong resident volcanologist, Dr. Hirona, ang satuya pong professor dito sa Partido State University. Ang dati may pong professor sa Partido State University sa Geology Department, Professor Diosdado Dizon, si Dr. Gumba, ang samo pong mahigos na Dean sa School of Graduate Studies, asin po ang sarok patapang faculty na nakipagsabayan sa tuya na mag-contribute kan sa iyang kaisipan dili po sa satuyang forum kunya na aldaw. Gusto ko pong mang-express ng special thanks kay Congressman Gabi Bordado para po sa iya pong high steam presence na tinaw sa tuya pong programa ngayon na aldaw. Asin sa iya pong suporta sa mga academic initiatives na araw kaini na nagsusuporta po sa disaster reduction in management hindi po sa Camarines Sur asin sa Bicol region. I also would like to deeply acknowledge the esteemed presence of Honorable Mayor Ligacion for supporting this activity so that a large part of his constituency will have higher level of awareness sa mga arog po kaining disasters. Kay Dr. Paul Carson Alanis, salamat pong maray sa iya pong expertise asin sa objective discussion sa nature kang earthquake asin geological disasters na nagpakalma, nag-ease kang anxiety at mga kahaditan kan sa tuyang mga tagahinan nyo. Ako po mismo, I and my family directly felt the impact of this phenomenon because we were staying in Naga when we were quarantined there for 14 days. And my family were really traumatized by the experience. Also, I would like to thank Professor Girona for providing us historical background about our occasion and experience about disasters in Bicol and how we cope with these disasters. Also, to Professor Dizon for sharing his expertise, and Ms. Lara, our student, for sharing also very useful information. I'd like also to express my sincerest thanks to Dr. Gomba for providing administrative and moral support for this initiative. Ako po, I really believe that knowledge contribute much in shaping the outcome of risk. Ang pakanood, ini po ang nagkukontribute na maray kung ano ang pwedeng mangyari kaining mga risk sa satuyang kapalibutan. Sabi po, risk is a disaster waiting to happen. In the absence of knowledge about the existing risk, anticipatory strategies are compromised, both of individual, household, and community. Ang maluyang pakasabot o low knowledge or awareness about risk results to low risk perception o ito pong hababa na perception ng risk. This develops relaxed attitude, making individual complacent and vulnerable to disaster. Ignorance might even induce risk to disaster, even if that risk does not yet translate to disaster. When risk is transformed into disaster, the extent of damage or the magnitude of the disaster in terms of lives, and property loss are determined by the extent of vulnerability. Lack of information or awareness or knowledge about risk or disaster, which enable us understand the disaster or risk and how we should behave or prepare for it, makes us vulnerable to the impact of disasters. Higher level of awareness or deep understanding of the disaster reduces our vulnerability to the disaster, reducing the magnitude of its impacts to the disaster. So this forum on Bicol earthquakes and geological disaster awareness provided us deeper understanding on the risk and disaster from geological phenomena. This deep understanding and high level of awareness will enable us to develop anticipatory action and strategies that will reduce its impacts on our lives and livelihoods, and increasing our resiliency and adaptive capacity. Given the participation and deep understanding about disasters as social, economic, and geographic phenomena by our district and local government unit officials, we are assured of policies, programs, and interventions coming from them and from the government to support, enhance, and further strengthen our adaptive capacities despite our direct exposure to this risk and disaster. I read a scientific article contributed by foreign scientists, and one of them is now residing in Bicol. Sabi ninda, the Bicol region, as sabi po kan sa mga geologists, as in pong scientists na ini, the Bicol region is sitting right underneath the Bicol volcanic arc, which provides the strong rationale for more partnership and collaboration among local government units, pag-asa, lawmakers, and academia to work together to promote disaster preparedness along geological disasters. Liwat po, gusto po magpasalamat sa Ilocabos, sa mga officials po kang government na yaong digdi, Congressman Bordado, Mayor Evacuation, Dr. Alanes, as in ang dati pong professor sa university, Professor Dison, and ang satuyang saro sa mga pamusong historian, ayaw mo sa itong university, Dr. Hirona, Professor Lara, Raymond, ang satuyang faculty sa Partido State na University na iyo po ang moderator ko niyan, Dr. Gumba. Asin sa ido po gabos na interesadong nag-iinanyog sa programang ini. Salamat pong maray sa indo pong pakisumaro asin pagtaon ng interes sa araw po kaining programa. Thank you very much po.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for that comprehensive and insightful closing message. Now, we may we request the participants to please accomplish the evaluation form, the link of which is posted via the Zoom chat and also posted on the Magellan Elcano Study Center. Your feedback would be, we value your feedback for the continuous improvement of our services in the Partido State University. Before we end the session, may we ask our participants to please turn on your camera for our photo op. Smile. Second. Third. Fourth. Fifth. And sixth. Once again, thank you very much to all the attendees via Zoom, via Facebook Live. The session will stay, or the recording will be here, will be in the Magellan Elcano Study Center. But before we end the session, may we read to you the certificate of appreciation to our speakers. First, we have this certificate of appreciation is awarded to Dr. Danilo M. Herona for unselfishly sharing his time and expertise in the Forum on Bicol Earthquakes and Geologic Disaster Awareness with the talk Brief History of Earthquakes in the Philippines and Bicol region, held this October 21, 2021 via Zoom and Facebook Live. Given this 21st day of October 2021, signed Raul G. Bardesina, PhD, SUC President 3, Partido State University. Thank you very much once again to our very dynamic Center Director. Another certificate is given to Dr. Paul Carson Alanis for unselfishly sharing his time and expertise in our forum with the talk Updates on October 2021 Seismic Activities in Bicol Region, held this day via Zoom and Facebook Live. Given this 21st day of October 2021. Signed Raul G. Bardesina, PhD, SUC President 3, Partido State University. Signed Danilo M. Herona, PhD, Director, Center for Partido Studies, Partido State University. Once again, thank you very much, Sir Paul Alanis and Sir Danny Herona. A virtual applause. Once again, our evaluation form is posted. The link to our evaluation form is posted in the Zoom chat and also in the Magellan Elcano Studies Center. Mag-i-stay po ang recording ng Facebook Live sa Magellan Elcano Studies Center. So we invite we request our participants today to still forward the link of the recording to your friends, to your associates, so that more people would be aware of our discussion, our very practical and insightful discussion this morning. And lastly, we invite our listeners, the watchers, to please like our Facebook page, Magellan Elcano Studies Center. Thank you, and see you for another collaborative work with the Partido State University in the future. Once again, manatili po tayong ligtas sa mga panahon na ito. Maraming salamat po.
Hello, Mon. Miss Janine Israel from FIVOC's main office also shared some useful materials for hazard and earthquakes po. So the link of the material is in the chat box, and we will also be posting the link po doon sa ating Facebook Live. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Janine.
Thank you po, Ma'am Janine. Yeah, we will take note of this one. Ma'am Janine Israel, hazard hunter www.georisk.gov.ph. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Mo.
Sa kong mga tugang kay Kristo, kamusta po kamo? Ini po si Bishop Rolly, kay iba si Mayor Son Legasyon. Tagalog po sa Indo, gabos na anduyugan ang programa kan gobyerno na magpabakuna kontra COVID-19. Ini sa itong obligasyon sa satuyang kapwa, asin pagpapahalaga sa buhay na itinaokan sa itong kagurangnan.
Para sa mas marikas, konbenyente, asin ligtas na pagpalista para sa pagpabakuna, piglansar na niyato ang Naga City Online Vaccine Registration para makarehistro ang sarong Nagenyo, maglan-insta na sa covidvax.naga.gov.ph.
Ano pang hinahanap nindo? Madyana, magparehistro, asin magpabakuna.
Ang bakuna, ligtas, epektibo, asin libre.
Pagtarabangan ta,
suportahan ta, magpabakuna kontra COVID-19.